Here's the new Platinum Baryta 310 paper from Fotospeed. Let's have a look how good it is for colour and black and white images. Hello everybody, Sam Gregory here, photographer and Fotospeed ambassador, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Matt Baryta 310, the new paper from Fotospeed. We're going to look at a number of prints, 3 colour, 3 black and white, with different types of images as well to see just how well it performs. And I'll explain to you what I'm looking for in a paper and whether I think the Matt Baryta gets the job done. Now, let's just talk very briefly about the tech specs of the Matt Baryta. It is a 100% cotton white base and it's OBA free. Now that means it's free of optical brightening agents, so archivally it will look better for longer. It will look just like you printed it in still decades to come. It is, however, called a Baryta, so why is that? And it's because it has a barium sulfate layer within the surface texture. Now that barium sulfate adds clarity, sharpness, a little bit of texture, and also it really helps with the black point and the white point to give the paper a real chance to be able to cope with more contrasty images and give you that punch. And that punch is often what is missing sometimes on the matte papers. And if you've experienced that in the past, I think you might find with this Matt Baryta that it solves those problems. Anyway, what we're going to do now, we're going to jump onto the computer. I'll walk through the 6 different images I've selected and tell you why and how I'm expecting them to perform and what I'm looking for on the paper to perform as well. We'll show you some close-ups of the surface texture of those different prints, and I'll finish by explaining my thoughts about the Matt Baryta and where it sits amongst the other Fotospeed papers within the range as well. So stay with me for the next few minutes and we'll talk all things photography and all things Matt Baryta 310. Okay, so let's have a look at the images that I've chosen to try this new Matt Baryta paper with for this particular video. I'm going to very briefly just walk through the images and things I might think about if I was going to print them, any concerns or reasons why I've chosen them for this particular video. And also when I've done that, I'm going to go to the print module and I'm going to show you how to choose the correct profile. And if you've just bought a pack of Matt Baryta or one of the test packs, I'm going to show you quickly how to download the ICC profile that's specific to your printer as well. So we'll come to that in a few moments. Then of course we'll get them all printed out. So let's just briefly zap through the images. Obviously I'll try to choose an array so that we can get a different feel and different colors, different textures, etc. This is a very busy woodland scene. It's actually in Italy in autumn, but there's some fallen trees, there's lots of texture down there in that area. There's the brighter yellows up here, the greens, the browns. So a really nice test of a paper. I would normally print this sort of image on probably platinum etching, so it'll be nice to see how the Matt Baryta does from the point of view of something so textured. Now the second one I'd like to show you is this, which is a little more minimalist, if you will. This is actually in New Zealand, believe it or not, but there'd been some amazing light and weather off to the left-hand side of this scene, and had these beautiful textures on the water as the wind was sort of rippling across it. So really nice, and there's some very subtle colors in here as well. This was actually a 4-second exposure, as you can see up here, and I've done very little to it in the edit. The light was kind of mad enough as it was already, and I've chosen this one for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a much softer palette color wise than the previous image, but there is some pinky peachy hues, and 2, because of this beautiful texture down here in the water. I want to see that again, how that responds on the Matt Baryta. Now I couldn't do one of these tests of a new paper without throwing some snow at it, because I think that's always an excellent thing to check out when you're trying papers. You can see here this is clearly a fairly dramatic scene as well, so we're going to see some of that color. There's quite a range, just tickles down here on the low end of the histogram, and up here we've got quite a lot of sharp detail in the the empty or the bare branches there that you can see. And I'm really interested, as again from a snow point of view, to see how this renders. Now one quick thing, I'm sure you will have all heard this before, if you are editing snow based images, I find it's very useful to have a white background here on on Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever it might be. If you go to black, suddenly this white snow feels super white, doesn't it? It just pops right out, and you might think actually, oh, that's probably a bit too light. But if you pop that back to white, you can actually see how far away it really is from white. So that's just a little tip for snow-based images. Talking of snow-based images, we've got a black and white one, which I'm going to do next. And I've got great hopes for this Matt Baryta across black and white and colour. Barytas generally are well known for their black and white qualities because of the black and the white points, and that treatment of the paper itself, the surface of the paper, allows for extra density, extra punch really, I suppose. And commonly on matte papers, that punch is not always there to a great degree, and that would be the only sort of criticism perhaps of matte papers. But I think with the Matt Baryta we're going to find that it is pretty punchy, which will be nice. There's obviously an awful lot of texture in this image as well. We've got the dusted snow, we've got the hard, well, it's actually very soft, dolomite rock underneath that all as well. So again, with the fine grain of this new Matt Baryta, I'm really thinking this is going to look great on it. I did want to have something a little more subtle. This is obviously a little bit more a sort of abstract-y image, if you will, just about the lines and the energy, the flow, as it were. And I've chosen this because it's kind of what I would call a sort of mid-grey image. The highlights aren't particularly high and the shadow areas aren't particularly deep either. So this is that mid area, and again, if I was printing this normally I'd probably go for a platinum etching, which I think would do quite a nice job, but the platinum etching is probably a little bit warmer paper than the Matt Baryta, so I'm hoping the Matt Baryta actually would be slightly more suited to this. If we are talking about what else I would have used, probably NST Bright White would previously have been my go-to for snow-based images, and that's because it's got that nice high white point. But let's see again how we do with the Matt Baryta. Now finally, I've chucked it a bit of a nasty, which is this one here. This is a very high contrasty looking scene. Obviously we've got light areas over here on the branches and on the trunk here, haven't we, and in the leaves, and then we've got really sort of dark textured areas, you know, especially getting down into here, which is just full shadow. This is actually autumn in the New Forest, believe it or not, but obviously black and whited. And again, I think this will be a nice test, because if I was printing this on platinum etching normally, which is my normal choice, I'd be a bit worried about these dark areas sort of blocking out a little bit, or maybe not being dark enough, and then it just turns a little bit muddy. Whereas I'm hoping with the Baryta, because it's got that barium sulfate finish on it in the surface, I'm hoping it can cope with that contrasty, gnarly sort of feel. Now let's get over to the print module. I'm going to just talk to you about setting up an image to print. Now I've already got my page set up to A3 and my print settings of the print, how I want them in a way, but I'm going to cover that in a sec. Cell size, margins, etc. all sorted, and I'm sure you guys all know what you're doing with that. If not, let us know in the comments, but there are videos we've done before going through those. What I wanted to get to though was the color management area down here. You can see I've got a few in here because I'm just doing a few videos at the moment, and I generally use the generic ICC profile or ICM profile, and I've had to download that for the Matt Baryta because it's a brand new paper. I don't have the profile already, so you can pop that in there. Now if you haven't got this, or you're not comfortable in how to download this, we have done a separate video about it, but I'm going to just jump into that for 2 or 3 minutes. If you already know what you're doing here, feel free to scoot through the video 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm going to get to the actual printing, and you'll see the prints coming out of the printer, and we'll talk about them a bit more. But for those who want to know, let's briefly have a quick look at how you would find and download and save the Matt Baryta profile onto your computer and therefore into your Lightroom. Okay, so the first thing we would do is go to photospeed.com, the website. You just find the paper that you want the profile for. Now, as it happens, this is on the front page of their site, so that's just going to load. We go to Shop, Matt Baryta, and you'll see here, download free printer profiles. So let's just grab that. It opens another page. And in this instance, I'm going to choose the Canon Pro 300, but you can see there's a huge amount of profiles here. So these are the profiles for each individual printer for the new Matt Baryta paper. So you just go to Canon Pro 300, and then in here you've got the photo quality options, you've got the fine art options, and all the different papers are here. And you just go to download profile, and you can see that's going to download up here into your download area as well. Okay, so once you've got it in the download bit, you just literally drag it over to your desktop there, which you can see I've done. And then if you open the profile here, you've got the actual profile itself, which will either end ICC or ICM. And you've also got this profile installation instructions. So rather than me go through step by step, I'm just going to point this bit out to you, because if you have a Windows machine or you have a Mac, it's going to be different. So I'm just going to let you guys do that at home. But essentially, once you've opened up this PDF, you can see the instructions on a PC and you can see the instructions on a Mac. The main thing is you just need to get it into the correct part of your color sync part of your library, which is in your hard drive essentially. But all the information is here, and if you're not sure, you can just pause this here, or obviously when you download it you can see it. And if you do that correctly, you will then find that when you may have to restart your Lightroom, but when you have the profile correctly dropped into the right place on your hard drive, when you click in this area, it will let you choose it, and or you may be able to find a host of them by clicking on that other option as well. And that may help you find it if you've not already got it ticked. It will be in one of these saved areas for you. Any questions on that, just let us know in the comments. But for now, I'm going to print these out. We'll have a good look at them close up, and I'll give you some of my thoughts about the images and how the paper has done with this array of different images. Okay, so let's get into the images. I'm going to walk through the three colour ones first. I'm not going to spend ages on these, just going to point out one or two things which I think are important and which are relevant to the image on the particular paper. So this image, woodland image, we chose because of the massive amount of textures in there and the colours as well. And I really wanted to see how the Matt Baryta 310 coped with all of those fine details, those fine textures which are in the branches and in the fallen branches here, and also the coloration of the yellows and the greens. This image is fairly bright. You will have seen on the histogram when we looked at it on the computer, but there are slightly, darker areas in the darker greens up here and around there. Now, the answer, how do I feel about it? I feel fantastic, basically. Normally I would print this on platinum etching, which is a very good paper for textured images because of its etching surface. Platinum etching is a little warmer, in my opinion, than the Matt Baryta. The base feels a little warmer on the platinum etching. But I think this Matt Baryta has done a really, really fantastic job of printing this. What I really, really like actually is the fine detail. There is a very, very microscopic looking amount of detail layer, like a fine detail on the surface of the Matt Baryta, and it makes these sorts of images really feel very crisp. And that's also thanks to the barium sulfate, which is in there as well. So just as a final thought on this one, fantastic for any woodland colour based images. Obviously this is more autumnal, but really what I wanted to see was how it coped with fine texture, and it really, really, really did a fantastic job. Let's get on to the next image and see what we think of that. Okay, now this is our second colour image, and a different sort of vibe in that we've got lots of areas of open space. The colour palette is different. We've got these peachy, purpley, soft orangey hues, very, very subtle, quite pastel, isn't it, in its coloration, so to speak. So I wanted to see how it coped with the big sky, cloud, open area here. There's not any major detail in that. And again, that very fine sort of grain finish to the paper, very, very fine, looks very attractive on big open areas. And also in the sea here, this is actually a few seconds, this exposure, so it's had some movement in the water, but there is the wind on top of it, so you get that nice rippling. And again, the fine detail down in these areas has rendered really, really nicely. I think with all of these prints I'm going to walk through, the Matt Baryta has done really, really well. And the other thing I would say about it is it's very easy to print with. I didn't have to think about making any extra adjustments for the print. What I see on the screen and what has come out on the paper has absolute parity. Now, some of that is to do with having a properly calibrated screen and the right profile, but actually some papers are a little easier to deal with than others in terms of producing what you expect to come out of the other end. So as a final thought on this one, more softer muted colours, fantastic, and also large areas where there's not much happening, also fantastic. If I was printing this on anything else, I would perhaps have considered either the platinum cotton or the NST bright white, but I actually think even compared to those, I would definitely choose the Matt Baryta going forward for this type of image. Now let's get into the snowy images. First one, the colour image. And I mentioned in the computer part of this chat that the actual colour of the snow and the brightness of the snow is always the tricky bit when printing snow images. We think of snow as being white, don't we, in the general world, but it isn't really ever quite white. There are often subtle shades of blues, and depending on the atmospheric light around you, you can even pick up purples, yellows, oranges, whatever it might be. So what I generally am looking for, especially in this image, is fairly neutral on the snow colour, albeit there are some blues and purple sort of hues from the light that was happening above us. But you can see that actually it's done a really nice job of the snow. It's picked up some really nice detail here in the bare tree at the bottom. The branches, those are nice and sharp. And also up here on the mountain itself, there's excellent texture detail, as I would expect from the Matt Baryta. It's excellent texture detail, and you feel like you can get into the image, and that I think is a massive plus for the matte papers generally. They feel like they're a little bit more 3D perhaps than some of the gloss and semi-gloss or luster papers too. So all in all, a nice rendition of a snowy image. I think again, if I was printing this on anything else, I would probably, my normal default for snow stuff is NST bright white. But again, I'm going to be completely honest, I slightly prefer this Matt Baryta, and the fact that it's OBA free means that it will keep this look for way longer than I'm going to be here. But it means it will keep this look. And my only worry sometimes with papers that aren't OBA free is what will happen to that coloration of the snow when that paper changes slightly. You know, will it yellow or will it, you know, do something else? So all in all, colour and snow and detail again, Matt Baryta has done a really good job. Now let's carry on with the snow theme, but this time in black and white. I'm going to tell you, this is an image I've printed on a few different papers, never quite been totally happy, simply because of the reasons I've alluded to a little bit earlier. When we see black and white and when we see snow, we kind of want white, or that white feeling, don't we? And it's very easy with these sorts of images to, for the image to feel a little cold or a little warm based on the paper type. So I've alluded to the fact maybe the platinum etching, which I've used lots of in the past, is a little warmer. And when I've printed this on platinum etching, I've just felt that warmth is a little bit too far. Similarly, there are other papers which feel a little colder, maybe even the cotton etching is one of those, because they're so white or they have such a white base, it actually makes the image feel a little cold. And what I mean by that is maybe there's that slight, it's the hint of blue in a way. It isn't blue there as a colour, but you'll all know what I mean. When the white balance feels a bit cold, even in a black and white, you can kind of sense it. So I feel like this, again, I'm struggling to come up with any negative points because I really am impressed with this Matt Baryta paper. It has done the best job of any of the Fotospeed papers on this particular image, and I've tried that on 6 or 7 image papers, sorry. Why? Is because it feels very neutral to me, plus there's enough detail and texture. However, in these areas up here of sky, where it's actually sort of cloud really, snow cloud, where there's nothing happening, I don't, on this image anyway, I don't want to see the texture of the paper particularly, but I don't want it to be completely smooth like it would on the platinum Baryta. On the Matt Baryta, it just has enough, a hint, an absolute hint of speckled texture, and that's all, and that's exactly what I wanted. So again, fantastic job for the Matt Baryta. Okay, so in terms of black and white now, we're onto an image which is a little more dense than obviously our snow image before. And what do I mean by that is we've got larger areas of shadow, so mid shadows and dark shadows as well. No completely blacked out areas, but plenty of dense shadow, albeit we've also got the highlights of the grasses here. Now, again, I am very happy with how this has rendered this particular image. I have also printed this on a couple of different papers, platinum etching being one, and also the gloss art fibre. And I would say I am perfectly happy with the Matt Baryta, but I'm not as leaping out of the chair happy as I have been on some of the images. I'm not really sure why. It does a perfectly good job, but it doesn't seem to be, in my opinion, on this image, adding anything particular that I couldn't already get from the others. I really actually like these sorts of images on the gloss art fibre, where there's some mid and heavier shadow areas. But in terms of how it's done, it's kept the detail really nicely in the grasses. There aren't any dodgy splotching or strange transitions in the shadow areas, which again is really nice too. And there's just enough contrast throughout the frame to mirror and give parity to what I have on the computer. So it's done a fantastic job, as I hope it would, but it hasn't moved me completely off any other solution on this particular image at least. Now this is the final black and white image, and this actually is a bit of a swine to print because there are lots of dark areas, as I mentioned, in the computer segment. They're not really blacked out, but when you get those heavy shadow areas, some papers, maybe where there isn't quite the range as there is on this Matt Baryta, they do struggle, and you get slight sort of splotches, slight transition areas which aren't totally smooth. I think that's the best way to put it. However, the Matt Baryta, again, has done really, really well. And I think for a matte paper to cope with this image, this is probably done as well as any of the other Fotospeed papers would do on it. There's enough texture and enough sharp detail in the leaves, which we want, and the branches. But like I say, these dark areas, A, feel dark enough, and B, haven't got any strange transitional areas. The danger on perhaps some matte papers, if you're printing this image, is those dark areas would actually feel a little softer and a little lighter, and you then have to go into the edit and drag the black or the shadow slider down a bit to make them punchy enough. But the Matt Baryta as it stands does give a fairly good amount of contrast, and as I've said a few times, gives pretty much parity to what you're seeing on the screen. So from that point of view, you wouldn't need to be doing too many hard proofs. You can pretty much trust what you see is going to be what you get. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this video of me walking through these particular images. Of course, these are just a selection, and depending on the genre and the style of images you take, you may find there's other papers that float your boat. But I would say I have printed some other types of images on here as well, including portraits and some architectural stuff, and I'm really, really impressed with it all round. Where will the Matt Baryta sit for me? I'm going to be honest, it's now firmly in my top 3 papers, probably along with the platinum etching, and the third one sort of comes and goes. But I would put this either at number 1 or number 2. I'm seriously that impressed with it. It's been very, very fun to use. It feels great in the fingers. It feels heavy enough without feeling super, super weighty. And as I say, I haven't had any issues at all with throwing a wide variety of images at it to print. So if you're interested in grabbing some of the Matt Baryta, head on over to photospeed.com, where you can find all the sizes it's available in, and also you can sign up to the newsletter there to find out about all the latest news from Fotospeed. But from me today, I'll say thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.